Hi viewers, today we are going to discuss the formation of urine. As we know, the excretory system helps to eliminate the waste material from the body. These waste materials include nitrogenous compounds like ammonia, urea, uric acid, excess water and excess salts, etc. All these are eliminated as an aqueous solution which is called as the urine. All the nitrogen components, nitrogen wastages, they are excreted from the body in the form of an aqueous solution which is generally called as the urine. The formation of the urine takes place in 3 steps. So these steps are ultrafiltration, selective reabsorption and the tubular secretion. Along with them, we will also discuss the micturition, composition of urine and the role of renal tubule in the urine formation. So, the formation of urine takes place in 3 phases: ultrafiltration, selective reabsorption and the tubular secretion. Here in the first phase, that is the ultrafiltration, what happens? The blood of glomerulus that is being filtered into the lumen of the Bowman's capsule. This is known as the ultrafiltration. Ultrafiltration is a process where the blood which is present in the glomerulus that is filtered into the lumen of the Bowman's capsule. This is known as the ultrafiltration. It is also called as the glomerular filtration. Glomerular filtration. In this process, the blood, it forcibly pushes its components into the lumen of the Bowman's capsule. Here we have to remember 3 terms, that is filtration itself. Whenever you take into consideration a membrane, okay, if you keep the substances which can pass through, which cannot pass through this membrane, so those substances which can pass through this membrane, they cross the membrane, and those which are unable to cross the membrane, they kept aside. That is nothing but the filtration. Here in the case of a nephron, the filtration takes place through the pressure. So what are the pressures? Here we will see is the first kind of pressure is the pressure of the blood. The solutes which are present in the blood, they cause pressure which is known as the hydrostatic pressure. Which is known as the hydrostatic pressure. This hydrostatic pressure is of about 55 mmHg. 55 mmHg. Hydrostatic pressure is the pressure of solutes which are present in the blood. And the other pressures like colloidal osmotic pressure and the fluid pressure of the Bowman's capsule, both of them, they are always against the hydrostatic pressure. The colloidal osmotic pressure, which is caused by the plasma proteins, colloidal osmotic pressure which is caused by the plasma proteins of the blood within the glomerulus, is known as colloidal osmotic pressure. It is of about 30 mmHg. 30 mmHg. And the fluid pressure of the Bowman's capsule is the 15 mmHg. 15 mmHg. That is, this colloidal osmotic pressure 30 mmHg and the fluid pressure of the Bowman's capsule, fluid pressure of the Bowman's capsule 15 mmHg. Total this 45 mm Hg, it is always against to the hydrostatic pressure which is 55 mm Hg. Let us see the hydrostatic pressure 55 mm Hg, it is against to the both the colloidal pressure and the fluid pressure 45 mm Hg. So the net difference is 10 mm Hg. This is the net filtrate pressure which is responsible for the ultrafiltration in between the glomerulus and the Bowman's capsule. This makes the net filtrate pressure makes the ultrafiltration in between the glomerulus and Bowman's capsule. So this is also very useful. This is also very essential to know the diameter of the blood vessels, why there is a difference in the pressure. For example, if we observe the afferent arteriole, the diameter is somewhat more when compared to the efferent arteriole. In the previous class we have discussed the efferent arteriole's diameter is always lesser than the diameter of the afferent arteriole. And if you compare these two with that of the diameter of the blood capillaries which are present inside the glomerulus, that is furthermore less. The capillaries have less diameter when compared to the efferent and the afferent arterioles. So this is the reason why there will be a more hydrostatic pressure and that pushes the solutes, otherwise the components of the blood, forcibly into the Bowman's capsule. So this arrow mark shows the forcible pushing of the components of the blood into the Bowman's capsule from the glomerulus. Now here if you observe, this ultrafiltration takes place through three membranes. Here we will see one membrane out of three. One membrane is the endothelial membrane of the blood vessel. Endothelial membrane of the blood vessel. Second one is the basement membrane. And third one is the epithelial layer of the Bowman's capsule. Here we will see. Here this is the where we are seeing RBC, that is just below that we will see the endothelial layer, and the lines one, that is the basement membrane, and this is the epithelial membrane of the. So whenever the solution is filtering through these, so it has to cross endothelium of the blood vessel, basement membrane, and epithelium of the glomerulus. Epithelium of the Bowman's capsule, sorry. Now this epithelium of the Bowman's capsule comprises podocytes. They are made up of podocytes. The specialized cells which are present in the epithelium membrane of the Bowman's capsule are known as the podocytes. These podocytes show permeability to water and micromolecules and impermeable to RBC, macromolecules, and the cytoplasmic proteins. And these are arranged very near by near, and at the base of these podocytes we will see small apertures, very minute apertures. They are known as the slit pores. Otherwise filtration splits. They are present at the base of the podocytes, through which actually the ultrafiltration takes place. Okay, so the minute pores are responsible for the ultrafiltration. Okay, so that it is known as the microfiltration or ultrafiltration. The fluid which receives or which entered into the lumen of Bowman's capsule is known as the filtrate, ultrafiltrate. Otherwise also known as the primary urine, or glomerular filtrate, or nephric filtrate, right? So the ultrafiltrate which is present, which reached the lumen of Bowman's capsule, it looks like the cytoplasm, otherwise plasma of the blood, but the plasma proteins are absent. It consists of salts, glucose, amino acids, vitamins, urea and other nitrogenous wastages and some other micromolecules. Right? So the solute which is formed due to the ultrafiltration is known as the primary urine, otherwise glomerular filtrate, or we may also call it as the nephric filtrate. Okay, so the blood which goes out after the filtration, the blood which goes out through the efferent arteriole is somewhat thick, that is more viscous, contain blood vessels and little amount of water and plasma proteins. Little amount of water and the plasma proteins. Right? So what we have to remember in the first point, that is ultrafiltration or glomerular filtration, that is hydrostatic pressure we should remember 55 mmHg and colloidal osmotic pressure 30 mmHg, fluid pressure of Bowman's capsule 15 mmHg and net filtration that is equal to 55 minus 45 that is equal to 10 mmHg. If pressure is less, then filtration may be blocked. The net pressure if it is less, then that blocks the ultrafiltration. This should be remembered. And one more thing, for the first time in 1842, William Bowmans was a scientist who revealed the importance of the Bowman's capsule. William Bowmans in 1842. On behalf of his name, it was named as the Bowman's capsule. On behalf of William Bowman. Ludwig was the scientist. He revealed that the ultrafiltration is due to the hydrostatic pressure. It is due to the hydrostatic pressure. And the third one, Richards in 1924, ultrafiltration consists all the cytoplasmic components except proteins and chlorides. So he stated this ultrafiltrate as the deproteinized plasmon. Deproteinized plasmon. And there is a scientific evidence, and that was proven by Bayliss. Bayliss was a scientist who stated that the molecules which are less than 68,000 Daltons molecular weight, the molecules with less than 68,000 Daltons molecular weight, they can pass through the filter membrane. They will be filtrated. So this indicates that the deproteinized plasmon, the ultrafiltrate is known as deproteinized plasmon because the plasma proteins molecular weight is greater than 68,000 Daltons, so that they are unable to cross the membrane. They are unable to cross the endothelium of the blood vessel, basement membrane, and the epithelium, which is made up of podocytes in the Bowman's capsule. So these are to be remembered. Okay, and if we come to the ultrafiltration, there is another term which is known as glomerular filtration rate. Glomerular filtration rate. What is the glomerular filtration rate? Is the capacity of the kidneys to filtrate the blood. How much amount of blood will be filtrated in the kidneys per minute in the given period of time? That is the glomerular filtration rate. In the healthy human beings, in 1 minute, 125 ml of ultrafiltration has been formed per minute. So there are 24 hours in a day and 60 minutes. Okay, that is 1440 minutes per day into 125 ml. It is approximately 1,80,000 ml. 1,80,000 ml of primary urine has been formed. Okay, so 1000 ml is equal to 1 liter, so that it is 180 liters of primary urine has been formed by the healthy individual per day. 180 liters. So a very interesting thing it is. 180 liters of primary urine or glomerular filtrate has been formed per day by 2 kidneys, out of which only 1.8 liters of urine get excreted out. That is only 1% of ultrafiltrate, right? Totally 180 liters of ultrafiltrate has been formed by the kidneys per day, out of which only 1.8 liters of urine has been get excreted out. That is only 1% of urine get excreted out. Remaining 99% of water get reabsorbed. Remaining 99% of water get reabsorbed into the body, right? So this reabsorption of 99% of ultrafiltrate is generally known as selective reabsorption. What is the selective reabsorption? The 2 kidneys of healthy human being per day, they form 180 liters of ultrafiltrate, but out of 180 liters only 1.8 liters of urine will be excreted by the same individual. That is 99% of ultrafiltrate is again reabsorbed into the blood vessels. That is, reabsorption is very very essential, because the primary urine consists of the highly essential materials like glucose, salts, amino acids and water. So that in order to maintain the homeostasis of the blood, okay, so they have to go for the reabsorption. They have to go for the reabsorption, so that the 99% of the ultrafiltrate that reabsorbed into the peritubular network and vasa recta and so on. Okay, most of the times this selective reabsorption takes place in 3 regions of the renal tubule, that is PCT, proximal convoluted tubule, Henle's loop and the distal convoluted tubule. So wherever it may be takes place, it may be done in 2 ways generally. The reabsorption takes place through passive transport. Reabsorption takes place through passive transport, like the chloride ions and the other negative charged ions, they are passed through, otherwise they move through the passive transport without consuming any kind of energy. Whereas some of them they are transported through active transport. Active transport means they consume energy for the transportation. For example, sodium ions, glucose, amino acids, they use the active transport mechanism. As usually water transported through osmosis. Water transported through osmosis. So how the selective reabsorption takes place in various regions of renal tubule, let us discuss. Before going to the topic, based upon the threshold of the substances, we have divided all the substances into 3 groups. We have divided all the substances into 3 groups. Okay, high threshold substances, low threshold substances, non-threshold substances, based on how much it is essential for the body. If for example some X component is there in the ultrafiltrate, how much it is essential to reabsorb into our body, based upon that, and whether it has to be reabsorbed or excreted, based upon that they have categorized them into 3 groups. High threshold substances include glucose and chloride ions. Glucose and chloride, they are very essential to the body, so that they have to be reabsorbed. And whereas if you observe the low threshold substances, they are not useful, but little amounts of these urea, uric acid, phosphates, they may be reabsorbed into the blood. And non-threshold substances, they are not at all useful and they should be excreted out from the body. They are non-threshold substances, namely creatinine and the sulfates. Glucose and chlorides, they are the high threshold substances. Urea, uric acid, phosphates are the low threshold substances. Creatinine and the sulfates, they are non-threshold substances. Based upon this, they have to be reabsorbed or they may be expelled out from the body. Then take into consideration the first step, that is the reabsorption in proximal convoluted tubule. As we know, this region is proximal convoluted tubule. This region is proximal convoluted tubule. Okay, this proximal convoluted tubule, first of all, we should know the nature of the proximal convoluted tubule. Proximal convoluted tubule is highly permeable to water and solutes. Proximal convoluted tubule is highly permeable to water and solutes. Okay, and 65% of filter load of sodium and water and slightly lower percentage of filtered chloride are reabsorbed in the PCT. Right, 65% of ultrafiltrate, 65% of ultrafiltrate out of 100, that much have been reabsorbed in the PCT. So out of this, what are the things to be reabsorbed? Sodium and water, little amount of chlorides, okay. And the cells of the primary proximal convoluted tubule have the high capacity for the reabsorption. So previously we discussed that they have the cuboidal epithelium with the brush border that enhances the rate of absorption. Okay, and water absorbed by the osmosis without the influence of any hormone, any chemical, so that it is known as the obligatory water reabsorption. Obligatory water reabsorption. At the same time, sodium ions, glucose, amino acids, chlorides, potassium ions, calcium ions, magnesium ions, and etc. are reabsorbed from the lumen into the blood. And in the PCT, proximal convoluted tubule, organic acids and bases like bile salts, oxalates, hippuric acid, and urates are secreted into the renal fluid. H plus ions are also secreted into the lumen. The renal fluid is isotonic to the cortical fluid and the blood. The renal fluid is isotonic to the cortical fluid and the blood. So these are the things to be remembered under the side heading of reabsorption of PCT. Highly permeable, 65% of reabsorption. Okay, sodium, water, chloride are absorbed, obligatory reabsorption of water. Okay, so the things which are reabsorbed from lumen to blood, okay, the things to be secreted into the renal fluid. So this is the nature of the renal fluid. Then coming to the second one, reabsorption in descending limb. So here this is the Henle's loop. Out of this is the descending limb and this is the ascending limb. First of all, we see the reabsorption in the descending limb. In the descending limb, highly permeable to water and moderately permeable to the solutes like sodium ions and the urea. It allows only the diffusion of substances through its walls. In the descending limb, 15% of water is reabsorbed by the osmosis into the interstitial fluid. Again, it is the obligatory water reabsorption. Previously in the PCT, 65% of water, 65% of renal fluid, and here it is of about 15% of renal fluid. So 65, 15. So until it reaches the descending limb, 80% of renal filtrate that is being get reabsorbed into the interstitial fluid or into the blood. Urea diffuses into the lumen moderately from the interstitial fluid. As a result, the osmolarity of the glomerular filtrate gradually increases. So until this cortex, for example, it is 300, 700, 900, and finally it may be 1200 milliosmoles. So gradually when there is a reabsorption of water and the addition of urea to the lumen, that enhances the uh, concentration of the renal fluid. Although if there is an enhancement in the concentration, but it is almost all isotonic to the interstitial fluid. Almost all here you will see 1200 milliosmol concentration is there in the interstitial fluid. That much of osmolarity has been achieved by the renal fluid by losing water, by gaining urea, right? So the osmolarity of the urea reaches the maximum level at the hairpin turn of the loop, that is almost all 1200 milliosmoles. 1200 milliosmoles. So here 15% of water reabsorbed. These are the things to be remembered. Urea diffuses into the lumen. Okay, isotonic and osmolarity is maximum at the hairpin loop. Then coming to the third one, reabsorption ascending limb. Reabsorption in ascending limb. So this is the ascending limb. In the ascending limb we have two portions. Okay, thin portion and the thick portion, thin segment and the thick segment. So this is the thin segment and this is the thick segment. Okay, so here if you observe, the ascending limb has thin and thick segments. Thin segment, what is the nature of the thin segment is impermeable to water and less permeable to ions, whereas thick segment is also impermeable to water but reabsorbs sodium and potassium, sodium and chloride ions, sodium chlorides, magnesium, potassium, bicarbonates and calcium ions. These ions are reabsorbed in the thick region. The renal fluid is progressively diluted as passes it through the ascending limb. H plus ions are secreted. The reabsorption capacity of thin segment is less. Renal fluid in the ascending limb is hypotonic to the medullary interstitial fluid. So here if you observe, right from PCG to descending limb, it is increase, the concentration increase, and it is going upside, the concentration is decrease, it is hypotonic to the medullary interstitial fluid. And then what happens in the distal convoluted tubule? What happens in the distal convoluted tubule? In the distal convoluted tubule, it is highly permeable to, it is permeable to water and ions. It is permeable to water and ions. Here there are two kinds of cells we have discussed while discussing the structure of nephron. Principal cells are there and the intercalated cells are there. Principal cells reabsorb the sodium. Principal cells reabsorb the sodium and they secrete the potassium. Reabsorb the sodium and secrete the potassium. Whereas the intercalated cells, they secrete H plus ions and they reabsorb potassium ions and the bicarbonate ions. Potassium ions and the bicarbonate ions. So in this distal convoluted tubule, water is absorbed by the principal cells under the influence of ADH, antidiuretic hormone. Generally antidiuretic hormone is the vasopressin, which is released from the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. So it enhances the reabsorption of the water, so that it is known as the antidiuretic hormone. So if the reabsorption of water takes place under the influence of the hormone like the vasopressin, then it is known as the facultative reabsorption. So water reabsorption takes place in the PCT 65%, in the descending limb 15%, but it is not at all through the influence of the hormone. But here in the distal convoluted tubule, 9% of water get reabsorbed due to the influence of the vasopressin or antidiuretic hormone. If the reabsorption takes place through the stimulation of the hormone, that is known as the facultative reabsorption. Facultative water reabsorption. 9% of water get reabsorbed from the renal fluid. And one more thing we have to remember, aldosterone is a corticoid hormone. Aldosterone aids in the reabsorption of sodium ions in this part. Okay, there are involvement of two hormones. One is the vasopressin, which make the reabsorption of the water, and ADH hormone, which aids the reabsorption of sodium ions. So 65 plus 15, 80 plus 9, 18% of water get reabsorbed. And coming to the last portion, the collecting duct. Each and every nephron enters into the collecting duct, that enters into the collecting channel, and finally that enters into the renal pyramid. In the collecting duct, what happens? Water is absorbed in the cortical and medullary collecting ducts under the influence of ADH hormone as usually. In the collecting duct, 10% of water and sodium ions are reabsorbed. See, in the PCT, 65%, in the descending limb, 15%, okay, in the DCT, distal convoluted tubule, 9%, okay, and in the collecting tubule, 10%, 80, 18 and 99% of the water and the other material get reabsorbed as and when it reaches from Bowman's capsule to collecting tubule. Okay, so here in the medullary collecting duct, some amount of urea is also reabsorbed. It is secreted into the descending limb and thin part of the ascending limb. Thus, at the end of the collecting duct, concentration of glomerular filtrate is high. Now, the filtrate is known as the urine. Which is hypertonic to the blood and isotonic to the medullary interstitial place, otherwise medullary interstitial fluid. So, whenever the renal fluid starts from the glomerulus, that is PCT, as and when it reaches the collecting tubule, 99% of water and other salts they get reabsorbed. Only 1% of the renal filtrate in the form of urine, hypertonic urine, it will be excreted out. So this is about the reabsorption, selective reabsorption in various parts of nephron, that is reabsorption in PCT, reabsorption in the descending limb, reabsorption in the ascending limb. So we have to discriminate the thin limb and the thick limb, and reabsorption in the DCT, distal convoluted tubule. Okay. Now reabsorption in the collecting duct. So total there are two kidneys, 180 liters of infiltrate per day. Out of 180 liters, 1.8 liters is excreted out, that is only 1%, 99% will be reabsorbed. At which regions? In the PCT, 65%, descending limb, 15%, distal convoluted tubule, 9%, and collecting duct, 10%. It is totally 99% will be reabsorbed, only 1% will be excreted out. Then the third step is the tubular secretion. What is the tubular secretion? Is always the water is and other salts are reabsorbed into the blood, but there is a secretion of materials from capillary net into the lumen through the interstitial fluid. So in general, the reabsorption takes place in this direction, but here the tubular secretion is the potassium ions, hydrogen ions, okay, they move from capillary network into the lumen of the nephron through the interstitial fluid. This is known as the tubular secretion, or it is also known as augmentation. secretion of H plus ions and potassium ions from blood capillary into the lumen of the nephron. Not only that, we will also see the ammonia, hippuric acid and other things they secreted into the lumen of the tubule. So this is the third step. This is the third step. Okay. So after the formation of the urine, it is enter into the collecting duct and thereby to renal pelvis and pelvis to ureters, ureters to urinary bladder and from the urinary urinogenital aperture to the outside. Then coming to the next one, this is the tubular secretion. So the entire overview of the urine formation, and we have to see the concept of osmolarity. It is very essential to know the osmolarity, otherwise we may not discriminate how the isotonic urine get concentrated to hypertonic urine. Okay, see what is the osmolarity is concentration of ions, otherwise the molecules in the urine are measured in osmolarity or solute potential. How total ions in a decimeter solution is equal to 1 osmole. 1 osmole is equal to 1 mole of ions. 1 osmole is equal to 1 mole of ions. For example, we have 1 mole of NaCl. We have 1 mole of NaCl. So the solution osmolarity, 1 mole of NaCl osmolarity is 2 osmoles. How we will calculate? That is, in the 1 mole of NaCl, 1 mole of sodium is there and 1 mole of chlorine is there. 1 mole of sodium ions, 1 mole of chloride ions are there. So that 1 plus 1, the osmolarity is 2. That is, the units for the osmolarity is milliosmoles per decimeter of blood. Milliosmoles per decimeter of blood. The osmolarity of the blood is 300 milliosmoles per decimeter of blood. The osmolarity of the blood is 300, and if you observe the kidney medullary solutions, it is 1200. Just now we have seen at the hairpin loop. And if you observe the osmolarity of the sea water, this is 1000 milliosmoles, and all these things they are termed as the units: 300 units, 1000 units and the 1200 units. So let us see once the previous picture. Here we have written all the numbers and units. What are these numbers? 300. This denotes the osmolarity of the cortical interstitial fluid is 300 milliosmoles. It is slowly raised 400, 600, 900 and 1200 at the deeper medullary region of the kidney. So at the same time, if you observe the milliosmolarity of the renal fluid, so 300, 300, 400 milliosmoles, 600, 900, 1200. So it is raised up and again diluted 700, 400, 200 and 100. Whenever it reaches the collecting duct, it is again hypertonic to the blood and isotonic to the interstitial fluid. This is the concept of osmolarity. So this is very essential in understanding the counter current mechanism, which we will discuss in the next class. Then come to the micturition. So the release of urine from the urinary bladder is the micturition. So for this we require the walls of the urinary bladder and bladder sphincter, urethra sphincter. In general, whenever the urinary bladder is filled up with the urine, the stretch receptors they give information to the they give the sensory signals to the central nervous system, and in addition to that, in response to that, the motor signals they arise from the central nervous system. They are received by the receptors of the urinary bladder, and thereby smooth muscles get contracted and the urethra sphincter will be get relaxed and the urine get goes outside. So it is a reflex arc, otherwise micturition reflex. And if you observe the composition of urine, in the urine 90%, 95% of water is there, remaining 5% of solids. Out of this, 2% of urea get excreted. 2% of urea get excreted out. So it is almost sterile. 95% of water, nitrogen waste are urea, uric acid, ammonia and creatinine, and some electrolytes. Light yellow color due to the urochrome. Urochrome is the coloring pigment which is formed from the breakdown of the hemoglobin, and that gives the color to the urea, otherwise urine. So the fecal matter get colored by the bile pigments, that is by the bile pigments. This is all about the formation of the urine that takes place in three steps: ultrafiltration, selective reabsorption, and the tubular secretion. Thank you, one and all.